Magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Kumusta po ang bawat isa sa atin? Sana po ay nasa magandang estado po tayo ng kalusugan. Manatili po tayong malusog at ligtas mga kasama. Ano man po itong community quarantine level na or classification na meron tayo sa lugar natin, alalahanin po natin na nasa gitna pa rin po tayo ng pandemya at nariyan pa rin po ang virus na kailangan po nating iwasan. So, ugaliin po natin ang pagsusot ng face mask at face shield. Importante rin po ang physical distancing at ang pananatili sa bahay. Ako pong muli si Michael Anthony Mantala. Makakasama po natin siya nga pala sa webinar session natin ngayong umaga, si Miss Maria Teresa Capule. Tawag po namin sa kanya, nickname niya, si Miss Esa. Siya po ay Science Education Specialist. Ayan, siya po ay Science Education Specialist ng UP NISMED. Makakasama po natin siya bilang tagapagpadaloy po ng webinar natin ngayong umaga. So in about 6... Ayan. So magandang umaga ho sa ating lahat. In about 5 minutes po, we will begin our webinar session. Hintayin lang po muna natin ang ating mga co-teacher at ang mga magulang ng mga mag-aaral na natin na makapag-tune in sa ating Facebook Live.
Yes, Sir Mike. So habang naghihintay po, sana po ay anyayahan po natin ang ating mga co-teachers or magulang para makapag-tune in din po sa ating Facebook Live. Excited na po kami na magbahagi sa inyo at makasalamuha po kayo. So habang nag-aantay po tayo, itag po natin ang ating mga kaibigan, i-message po natin sila, at imbitahin po natin sila na sumali sa atin ngayong araw na ito. Sana po ay bigyan niyo po kami ng pagkakataon na makilala po kayo. So sa comment box po ay pakilagay po kung saang paaralan po kayo galing at ano pong division. So, yun.
Miss Esa, actually dumadami. Oo. Mukhang dumadami na ang mga participants natin sa Facebook Live. Magandang umaga kay Ma'am Phoebe Hasil. Siya po ay kasama natin mula sa Talisayan, NHS, Zamboanga. Wow. So, we're from all over, Miss Esa.
Yes nga po, sir. Ang bilis ng transition ng comment box. Meron po tayo from Pangasinan. Ang dami pong galing Pangasinan.
May makakasama rin tayo from Bayabas Elementary School, si Ma'am Christy Hakulba Baltazar.
Si Miss Leticia Fonbuena po from Pangasinan. Hello po, magandang umaga po. Ayan.
Makakasama rin natin, Miss Esa, si Sir or Miss, si Pamo Charles. Good morning sa inyo po dyan sa Ligao City, Albay.
Oo nga
At syempre, ang lagi nating masugid na mga participants, mga guro ng Nueva Vizcaya General Comprehensive High School sa Nueva Vizcaya, sina teachers Aloyda, Bernadette, Puring at Marivic. Ayan. Partner school ng KaSaMa, by the way, ang Nueva Vizcaya General Comprehensive High School. At sa ibang mga teachers dyan, magandang umaga sa inyo.
Ayan, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. Si Miss Karen Bedan Malabana ng Abadeo, Cavite, magandang umaga po. Ayan, dumadami na po tayo, Sir Mike. So, huwag niyo pong kalimutan itag at imbitahan po ang ating mga co-teachers, mga magulang na sumama po sa atin ngayong araw at sabay-sabay po tayo lahat matuto.
Ayan, nanonood din, kasama rin natin na sa webinar na ito, si Aprilyn Joy Ranque Fernando mula sa Division of Laguna, District of Lumban. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat dyan.
Oo nga po. So nakikita natin talaga mula Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao, meron pong nakikinig sa atin at masaya po kami na nandito po kayong lahat kasama natin ngayong umaga.
Anyayahan na po natin ang ating mga co-teacher at saka mga kasama nating mga magulang na para makasalamuha po natin sila dito sa webinar na ito. Very interesting po ang topic natin ngayong umaga. I'm sure po marami po kayong takeaways.
So karamihan sa inyo marahil ay kilala na ang KaSaMa Teachers Community. Siguro hindi lang itong unang beses na narinig nyo ang KaSaMa. Para sa iba, marahil ay bago po ito sa inyong pandinig. So before I tell you more about KaSaMa Teachers Community, para sa mga nakakaalam na or kahit sa mga hindi pa, maaari niyo po bang banggitin sa comment section kung anong ibig sabihin ng KaSaMa? So tingnan natin Sir Mike kung meron magbibigay sa atin ng sagot sa ating comment section.
Ayan.
Ayan.
Ano nga ba ang kasama?
Ano ang KaSaMa?
Okay, marami tayong mga kasama, mga kasama members.
Yes, oo.
Okay, sa mga nakakaalam or hindi pa nakakaalam, paki-type in po kung anong ibig sabihin ng kasama.
Yes po. May libreng shoutout po sa, ayan, si Miss Sheila Parungaw Galvez. Ang sabi niya po ay ka-science at mathematics. Tama po ba to? Si Miss Aileen Borromeo Nieto, sabi niya ay ka-science at ka-math. Maraming salamat po sa mga sagot nyo. Siguro si Sir Mike ang magsasabi sa atin kung tama ba or mali ang na-share po sa atin. Si Miss Sheena Sacro Cruz, sabi niya, Sir, ka-science at and ka-math. Si Miss Roxy Luisa, sabi niya, ka-science at ka-mathematics. Tama po ba sila, Sir Mike? Sir Mike? Okay, so tama po yung mga nabigay po sa ating mga sagot. So, ang kasama po ay tumatayo sa ka-science at ka-mathematics teacher. So, salamat po sa lahat ng mga sumagot na nabanggit ko ang pangalan kanina. So, ano nga po ba mga organization na nasa likod ng KaSaMa Teachers? Okay. So, ang KaSaMa Teachers Community or ka-science and ka-mathematics is a professional online community for Filipino K-12 science and mathematics teachers, launched by the University of the Philippines National Institute for Science and Mathematics Education Development, or UPNISMED, in partnership with Gokongwei Brothers Foundation, or GBF. So to know more about our platform, please watch this video. Okay, so there you have it. Aside from webinars, we also continuously develop content and learning resources such as lesson plans, activities, and exercises, as well as assessment and test items, among other things, which could be of help to you as you prepare for the opening of classes, especially as you transition to the next normal in education. Now, how do you register? Just visit www.kasamateachers.ph, which is now flashed on your screen, and type in the caption and sign up for free. Libre po ito mga kasama. Connect with your co-teachers, connect with KaSaMa Teachers Community. So, ipapakilala na po sa atin ni Sir Mike ang ating resource speaker today. Sir Mike?
Oo, tama. Welcome to KaSaMa Webinars by KaSaMa Teachers Community.
Okay, Sir Mike. Okay, so...
Ayan, sorry. Okay, Esa, thank you. Let me now introduce to you our resource speaker. Our resource speaker is a science education specialist of the University of the Philippines National Institute for Science and Mathematics Education Development, or UP-NISMED, and an adjunct faculty of the UP Open University, teaching both undergraduate and graduate courses. She has been involved in training teachers on the use of ICT in science and mathematics at the basic education level for 27 years now. Mga kasama, to share with us insights about Designing Online Learning Activities, let us all welcome Dr. Mona Lisa Sasing. Good morning, Dr. Mona.
Good morning. Maayong buntag sa tanang mga taga Visayas and Mindanao again. And magandang umaga sa lahat ng mga taga Luzon. We're back. And what we're going to discuss this morning will be about how you design your online learning activities. Okay, let me just share my screen. Okay, before we proceed, let me just give you an overview of what will be covered in this session. I'm going to refresh you on what online distance learning is, being a form of the distance learning modality. And then we'll also give you an overview of the principles of good practice in designing online instruction in general. And then give you guidelines in designing online learning activities, and also share with you some student-centered instructional methods that you can employ for your online learning activities, and some tips to remember to guide you when you do your own or develop your own online learning activities and your online instruction in general. All right. So I'm sure many of you already know about online distance learning. It's one of those distance learning modalities prescribed by the Department of Education in its Basic Education Learning Continuity Plan. So aside from modular distance learning, which we discussed the other session, online distance learning is another form of remote or distance learning where the setup is the teaching and learning processes occur while the teachers and the students are not in the same place physically. So they usually are in their own learning spaces, and that's their homes. And the internet in this case is used to deliver instruction. Unlike in modular distance learning, printed learning modules or digital formats of learning modules are used to deliver instruction. In this case, you make use of the internet to deliver instruction. So you can also make use of modules, but they're posted in your online classroom. And overall, when you design online instruction, it does not actually differ much from how you design your face-to-face instruction, except that there are additional considerations. And the overall philosophy that we follow in designing online instruction is that we should provide learners with more than just the content knowledge that they need to understand. And we should also make them use of the skills and knowledge that they learned in solving real life problems and in understanding the world. Just like when you design your face-to-face instruction, your focus should not be just to prepare them for examinations. You have to make sure that your learners have the opportunity to practice thinking for themselves and apply the things that they learned from your lesson to the real world scenarios, no, or to learn about the world that they live in. So we have to train learners to think for themselves. So how do you do it then? Of course, you ask the following questions, just like the questions. These are the same questions that you ask when you design your own face-to-face instruction. Okay, so you have to consider who your learners are, what types of learners you have, and you also have to consider their prior knowledge. What can they do already? And of course, what is the purpose of your activity? You have to think of why you let them do that activity. What do you want your learners to be able to do after doing the activity? And you just don't limit them to the skills that they will learn from about the content, no, from learning about the content. You also have to let them develop other skills, no, like uh, develop further their communication skills, or develop even their technology skills, no, they can create presentations on their own, make use of digital tools, no, making use of digital tools. And in designing online instruction, think of Schickering and Gamson's 7 principles of good practice, which actually are based on 50 years of research. No, so they shared with us these 7 principles, and the first is number 1, to encourage interactions. This is also the same in face-to-face instruction. We have to make sure that our students interact with each other, not just with each other, but interact also with us. No, so the interaction is crucial, especially in distance learning. And the second principle is for you to develop your instruction should enable your students to develop that mutual uh, relationship, no, and they have to learn to cooperate among themselves. So they take mutual responsibility of their learning. So you encourage group tasks. And third is you promote active learning. When you engage your students in active learning, of course, there will be interactions not just with other students and not just with you, but also with the content itself. And when you promote active learning, you actually help them realize the importance of the content that they are learning from your class and relate it to the world around them, no? To help them understand the world around them. And communicate high expectations. From the very start, it is important that you tell your students what you expect from them. You have to tell them what kind of outputs you expect from them. You have to be clear with your expectations. And then the fifth is that you facilitate time on task. When you facilitate time on task, you actually um, make use of you convert big outputs into smaller ones, no? For example, when you are teaching research to senior high school students, for example, you can break down the tasks or the outputs into small, manageable ones, like helping them come up first with an outline or just a topic idea for the research. And then next is an outline of their plan or a proposal of their plan for research. And then second is the way that the data gathering already. And then the fourth would be the results, discussion of the results, and then the last, the recommendations and conclusions and recommendations. So all those small outputs will lead to them creating that big research output, no? So you have to you can facilitate time on task by breaking down big projects or big outputs into small and manageable ones. And providing rich and rapid feedback in online instruction is also important. You have to make sure that you let your students know what you think of their work, because that's how they will improve. And that's also one way of telling them that they're not alone, no? So if they need help from you to further improve their skills or their outputs, then they can consult you, no? And actually, the feedback is not just beneficial. Looking at the work of your students and giving them feedback is not only beneficial to the students. It will also do good for you. It will help you improve your instruction. If you see that your students are having difficulty doing a particular activity, then you have to rethink. You have to reflect. How can you redesign your activity, or what could have gone wrong, no? So, or what enrichment or what supplementary materials are you going to give them so that they will be able to successfully complete the activity? So, looking at the work of your students, no, is not just for them. It's also for you, because it will also give you feedback regarding your instruction. And you have to consider that when students go to your class, they actually bring with them different learning styles. So you have to respect that. So you have to give them a wide variety of activities that can cater different learning styles. For example, if you design an activity that uh, will enable students to develop their written communication skills, then maybe another activity in another activity, you will ask them to develop their oral communication skills. So those who are not so good in writing down but so good in verbalizing or in expressing orally their ideas, then they will have the chance, no? But of course, hindi nyo rin dapat i-limit lang yung students dun sa kung anong kaya nila. You also have to encourage them to do those na kung saan sila weak, so that they will also learn to develop those skills. So provide your students with a wide variety of activities that cater to different learning styles. And these are the 7 principles of good practice um, shared to us by Chickering and Gamson in 1987. And these these are not applicable only to online instruction. These are also applicable to face face-to-face instruction. So, in delivering online instruction, what are the things, no? Some of the things that you need to prepare. You have to prepare the learning tasks for your students. Even if you have the module and it says already the learning tasks, it still would be good for you to come up with the same guide, no, that you provide in modular distance learning. So you tell your students, if you base your instruction entirely in the module, which is digitized, which is posted on your classroom, then you have to tell them which tasks in that module are they going to do for that particular period of time. The same way when you do it in your modular distance learning, okay? And these learning tasks serve as the interface, no, between them, your learners, and the information that you give to them in that learning environment that engages them in the subject matter to facilitate learning. And in some cases, the assessment tasks are embedded already in the learning tasks, no? Alam nyo na to kung ano ang assessment tasks, that they are there to confirm whether or not the outcome has in fact been achieved, no? And that's not just given at the end of the unit or at the end of the school year, but it can be given, it can be embedded, no, in the different activities. I'm going to give you an example of, I'm going to show to you an example of a learning task. Let me just share my screen. Okay, so for example, this is an example of a learning task that discusses about the nature of mathematics. And students are asked to read about, are given readings, and they are to present what they understood about the nature of mathematics through a concept map. Okay? So In this case, it's also in the module, but because you cannot do the discussion, the sharing in the module, so they share their outputs, their concept maps in a discussion forum online. Okay? All right. And there are actually several additional considerations, no, that you need to bear in mind when you design online learning activities and online instruction in general. You have to think of different ways of communicating your content to your learners. What are some of these ways? First is you provide them with the usual readings, no, or handouts that you have. You just digitize those. If you have handouts, or if you have given them in the face-to-face instruction, you give them handouts, then you just printed handouts, then in online, you can convert those to PDF and then distribute those or post those readings in PDF format on your online classrooms. You can also refer them to online articles or websites or books or even essays, no, or even textbooks if they have printed textbooks that can serve as supplementary materials for them. That's one way of communicating content to your learners. And you have your own written materials, of course. And you can also use your own video lectures. And your video lectures or video lectures of somebody else, no, talking about the topic. There are a lot of video lectures, for example, in Khan Academy, which are good ones, which you can use for your students. Or if you want, you can create your own video lectures. How else can you communicate content to your students? Using narrated animations. Ito, matutuwa sila dito, ano? Kasi alam mo naman yung mga estudyante, even just by using a PowerPoint with animations and embedding a video in it, tuwang-tuwa na sila, no? So, makukuha mo na yung attention nila in class. So, you can also look for narrated animations, or you yourself, if you know how to create ones, then you can create, no, your own narrated animations. Or look for educational videos that are humorous, but yet, and yet educational. And then, your own PowerPoint presentations can be used by your learners, no? You can use your own presentations, such as this one, for example, as a way to communicate your content, which learners can view not just once, but several times until they completely understood the content. And of course, you can add, I'm pretty sure you already know about this, you can add voiceover narrations to your presentations. And another way to communicate content is when you post, no, in an online discussion forum, because there, that's particularly useful when you want to correct misconceptions or add information that are relevant when it is needed, no? So that can be done, for example, if you have asked them to share their views about genetically modified organisms, for example, then you reading from their posts, you found out that there were several misconceptions there. Then that's the time that you can post, no, a topic that will help clarify that misconception. Okay, another way is for real-time questions and answer sessions. In my class, in Math 2, I give them that Q&A forum where they can ask questions related to the content for Module 1. So, dun lahat ng tanong nila about Module 1, dun nila tinatanong and then sinasagot ko. Although many students are shy, no, they don't normally make use of Q&A to ask questions related to to clarify a content. Many of my students would just send me a private message instead, no, of posting their questions in that forum. But I'm just saying, what I'm just saying is that that's also one way that you communicate your content, no? You can post, you can create a Q&A forum for your students and tell them that this Q&A is for questions related to content in module 1, okay? Or related to content for lessons 1 and 2, for example. Then they can post the questions there. And you encourage in that real-time Q&A sessions, you encourage others to reply to posts of their classmates, okay? So these two, Q&A forum, which can be held asynchronously, and the real-time question and answer sessions, which can be done using Zoom, for example, or using Google Meet, then those are also ways of communicating content, even clarifying misconceptions. And questions that lead to direct reading and writing, such as well-framed discussion questions or essay questions within written assignments. So you can also post questions related to a particular reading, for example, that that you have given to them, and then ask them to, for example, cite their views or write about the opinion given by that writer in that particular reading assignment. And also some visualizations. You can give interactive media simulations, or you can make use of University of Colorado's PETS simulations, no? I'm going to show you this radio dating game that your learners can, that your learners can use, no? Okay. So can you see? I hope you can see my screen. So this one is where you're, in this simulation, your students will learn about the different types of radiometric dating, such as carbon dating, and understand how decay and half-life work to enable radiometric dating, and play a game that tests their ability to match the percentage of the dating element that remains to the age of the object. So, marami pong interactive simulations yung FET ng University of Colorado Boulder. Marami pa pong ibang mga, I'm sure the science teachers have already browsed for interactive for simulations from the different sites, and maybe you can share those, no? You can share those in your post right now so that other science teachers can use them. Okay. Then another way of communicating, so those are some of the ways that you can communicate your content. But remember, you do not need to recreate content. If you find that there are good content available online from credible sources, which are free for you to use, for you and your students to use them. Just make sure that you read that content first, or that resource, or you have really gone through it first prior to giving them to your students. So here, all you need to do is the time to browse and evaluate resources that are credible, useful, and relevant to your class. And in fact, in KaSaMa, we have curated resources for you. So you can visit KaSaMaTeachers.ph for resources that may be useful for your class, no? It can be just for your reference, or you can use the activity, for example. The activity itself you can use as it is, but you can also modify it to match your students, okay? So just visit KaSaMaTeachers.ph. Okay, so again, aside from communicating your content in various ways, you have to remember that you have to select ways that best appeal to a wide range of learners. Remember the 7 principles of good practice in designing online instruction by Schickering and Gamson. You have to make sure that your activities make use of ways that cater to the different learning styles of your learners. Okay. Another thing that you have to consider is the type of resource that you are going to use for your online learning activities. In selecting resources, you can either use your existing ones, okay? Or if you want, you can develop new ones. If you have the time, you can develop new ones. And just make sure that the learning resource that you select, that the learning resource that you provide your students, support the attainment of your learning objectives. Hindi yung i-bombard mo yung mga students ng sangkatutak na resources and then na-overwhelm na sila sa dami, tas hindi naman pala kailangan, hindi naman pala importante. Okay? So make sure that your learning resources support the attainment of the learning objectives that you have set for your students. Okay? And remember this, learning resources can be classified according to media type. So this is from Lorillard and Betham, as cited by Arinto and Bonito in the development of resource-based course packages. This is from UPOU. They cited this resource that when you select a particular media type, for example, a narrative media type, check if it supports the kind of learning task that you want your students to do. For example, if you want your students to make use of simulations in your science class, then simulations, just such as the ones I have, the radioactive dating that I have shown you earlier, involves experimentation and practice. So that's one kind of learning task that's supported by simulations, no, which is an adaptive type of media. And also it helps them practice or do experimentation and adapt to user input. So if, on the other hand, you want to make use of search engines or hypermedia, then that is what we refer to as interactive media type, which supports the following learning tasks: exploratory or investigative learning tasks, interactive medium returns, or the interactive medium returns that also require user input. And if you want to make use of web pages, no, just refer your students to websites that they can read the content from. And then also, if you want to refer them to some video files, then this type of media is what we call a narrative media. And what learning task does it support? Those tasks where learners are expected to apprehend or assimilate information. And this narrative medium is used to present the subject matter. Okay, so presentation ang purpose nito. What other types of media do we have here? We also have the communicative media, such as your chat or messenger, or this Zoom, which is a video conferencing facility. And the task supported here involves communication between individuals and groups. And for productive media, this is where your students can articulate or express how they understood the content, and then they can generate or construct their own representations of how they understood the content, and which we call knowledge products. Examples of productive type of media are your of course, the Google Docs, or your blogs or your wikis. Okay. All right. So here are some guidelines that I'd like to share with you when you design your online learning activities. These are based on my experience as a faculty of UP Open University, as well as my experience as a teacher trainer when we once conducted uh, a blended training, no, for teachers of St. Stephen, where we provided them with online activities, and also, of course, based on readings. So first, you have to aim for less content with a variety of methods to deliver subject content. And you can use discussion forum or blogs and employ teamwork, no? Kahit online sila, they can do group work. I have done that in my class and they appreciated it because they felt na hindi pala sila nag-iisa sa online learning nila. So nagawa nila yung group work nila where they conducted a group survey, and they were able to collaborate with each other, making use of online collaborative tools and the activities that enable learners to share and collaborate. So allow them also to share their outputs, no? So that they have a purpose of doing it, na they need to share it. So aayusin nila yon kasi i-share nila eh, di ba? Hindi lang yun makikita ni teacher. Of course, aayusin nila kasi makikita ni teacher. But when you tell them that they need to share it, not just to class, but even to a particular community, for example, of course, aayusin nila yan kasi gagamitin kunyari yun ng isang community, magiging useful yun sa isang community. So, that will give them a more meaningful parang experience na magamit or ma-share yung kanilang ginawa. And you have to keep your instructions simple and clear, according to Smith et al. And whenever possible, supplement written instructions with video instructions. Kung may time mo kayo and parang feel ninyong gumawa din ng video instructions, maganda yon, ano? This is especially useful for instructions that relate to doing a particular process, no? So kung kunyari lang yung pag-solve ng solving equations in two unknowns, for example, with two unknowns, you may want to instead of giving them just that instruction, then you can also give them video instructions para makita nila, no? And this will be particularly useful para dun sa mga visual na learners. Okay, and you design your assignments such that your learners will not be copying from each other. So you individualized you ask them to do assignments that require individualized answers. Okay, so one example is kunyari you ask them to gather data from their community, from within their barangay. So on the kunyari lang, they observe the weather for today for 1 week, and then i-gather nila yan. So yun, hindi sila pwedeng mangopya na lang ng classmates nila kasi yung weather na yon ay dun sa kanilang lugar, ano? And this one is particularly is good for online learning kasi nga your students, lalo na kung ang students mo are from the different places, no? Hindi naman sila dun sa iisang lugar lang. Okay? And think of assessments from the start. When you design your online learning activities, you have to consider also if that online learning activity, in that online learning activity, you can embed already assessment and work on the overall design of your instruction in order to integrate them within the subject matter rather than adding them on top of the content lesson. Oops, I'm sorry. Okay. And also, you have to give emphasis to projects or case studies or experiential learning and other forms of engaging activities. You structure activities that are problem-based, project-based, or case studies. No, projects can be linked to a discussion so learners can ask questions, their classmates can comment on each other's works, or they can work in teams. I'd like to show you these three examples on characterizing plate boundaries, the lifestyle project, and establishing relevance as a way to motivate introductory students. Okay, so let me just share my other screen to show you that. Okay, so this is about characterizing plate boundaries. This is from Teaching Geoscience Online. In this activity, students examine maps showing 4 different types of geologic data, and they're going to compare their observations. Okay, and you can just refer to this online resource, no, and read some more, especially those science teachers, which this can be baka magamit niyo po ito. Then another one is this one, the lifestyle project. Here, this is a 3-week project, and students learn about environmental alternatives by modifying their own lifestyles. And throughout the project, students reduce their impact on the environment by changing the way in which they live from day to day. This is an interesting project. Then another one is to establishing relevance as a way to motivate introductory students. No? So this assignment asks students to do oral interviews with at least 5 people and an online research on professional geology organizations and their missions. They make use of these interviews and research and write an editorial about it, describing what geology is. Okay, learn more about this. If you need the links, I can give this to you later. Okay. All right. Ano pa? Again, as mentioned earlier, you have personalized assignments and like have learners apply the content or topic to their own context. No? So an example, I have 3 examples here: analyzing your hometown stream, from grid to home, and environmental geology of the area where you live. So let me just share that. Oops. Okay. Here, this is about analyzing your hometown stream. So here, students analyze discharge records of streams or rivers of interest to them using the online data from USGS and WIS. And here is from grid to home, which students do a 1-period classroom, where students do a 1-period classroom activity where they analyze energy use, cost, and source patterns from their household, from other households, and to regional scales, and relate these patterns to CO2 emissions. Okay, and another one is the environmental geology of the area where you live. So here, students research and report on the environmental geology, resources, and hazards of the area around their home, and the project helps them develop abilities to apply what they have learned. Okay, let me go back to my presentation. Okay, so remember that your online learning in designing learning activities, be it in face-to-face or online, the key is to have interactions, not just among your students, but also between you and your students and your students and the content. Okay, so here to encourage student-teacher interaction, if what you do in face-to-face is a reporting followed by class discussions, followed by Q&A sessions, or a class discussion, or consultations, or giving of feedback, you can also do that online. You can make use of education, of discussion forums, make use of video conferencing facilities to do synchronous sessions where you can have consultation activities or reporting followed by Q&A sessions. And a simple email exchange is already a student-teacher interaction. Okay? So if students email you and you reply to their emails, there's already interaction going on. Okay? Then for student-student interaction, you also have to uh, again make use of those conferencing facilities, or even allow your students to do experiments by group online, no? Just explore for other online or virtual laboratories. There are a lot of them. I've asked some of the science KaSaMa teachers here watching us right now, joining us right now, to share, no, what virtual laboratories that they have used already or that they have discovered. You can share it here so that other teachers can also make use of those resources. And here are some types of online learning activities. This icebreaker activity is useful in introducing, no, in introduction sessions. No, this provides you opportunities to get to know your learners. Here, getting to know discussion boards with a sample task as follows. For example, you ask them to introduce themselves and post a photograph of themselves, or you ask them to post truths and one lie about themselves. And after posting some, you have to tell your other students that they can try to guess, no, what the truths are and what the lie is, and then ask clarifying fact questions to help figure about it. In my class, I ask my students the first week of the session to introduce themselves by sharing something interesting that they would want others to know about them. Okay, so that can also be one simple way of having icebreakers. Then interactive tutorials, no, so you can make use of drag and drop and hotspots activities or practice quizzes. I'm going to share with you a practice quiz that we have done in my Math 2 class. Okay, so this is the practice quiz, but this is not graded, no? Oops, sorry, nawala ako. Ay, na-lag out ako. Anyway, so my practice quizzes usually are not graded. I just give those for students to be able to practice, no, what they have learned or apply what they have learned. And you can do this in Moodle, you can do this even in Edmodo and other learning management systems. Meron silang mga features na allow you to include quizzes, no? Then discussion boards. This is the easiest way to allow learners to interact with one another and even with you. Okay, so you share, for example, the one that I have shared with you kanina, where they shared their concept maps about the nature of mathematics. So, and from that, their students, their classmates can comment on their output. And of course, they can do group work. They can do group scenario analysis or create an online presentation from all their readings for their project, or do simulation and games, and make use of online tools, no, such as Google Forms in conducting a group survey. So you can incorporate also in your learning activities the use of online tools. And here are some student-centered instructional methods that you can also think about that you can employ when you plan your online learning activities. You can have that, alam nyo na tong KWL, ano? So, alam nyo na tong mga to. So, this is just a parang refresher, no, na these are student-centered instructional methods that you can also consider in designing online learning activities, no? The jigsaw or experiments, simulations, or doing projects, games, just a simple Q&A, no? Or a debate. Alam ko, ginagawa nyo yung debate sa klase. So, they can debate on and take a stand. For example, if for those in favor of GMOs or genetically modified organisms and those who are not in favor of that, no? And then you can do an online debate, for example, using Google Meet or Zoom, or you can just have the debate, the exchanges happen asynchronously in a discussion forum. Okay, so now I leave you with these tips. Remember that online learning activities allow learners to be engaged and motivated, so they actively participate in class, and allow learners to be part of a learning community, and enable learners to do independent learning, and enable them to gain a deeper understanding of the content. Further, your learning activities should enable your learners to use, apply, and synthesize learning, and they should be varied enough to cater to different learning styles and provide them with opportunities for ongoing feedback, and let your students enjoy your learning activities. Generally, for online instruction, here are some tips. You have to get to know your students. Kasi nga, distance learning ito, hindi nyo sila nakikita masyado. So, make sure that you provide opportunities for you to be able to know them, no? And then, you provide adequate structure and guidelines. So, from the very start, sabihin mo sa kanila, paano ang submission of outputs? Saan isa-submit? Kailan isa-submit? Ano ang mga guidelines mo when you have these video conferencing sessions? When somebody's talking while in a video conferencing session, ano ang mga gagawin ng mga bata? And what etiquette do they need to observe when they participate in online discussion? So you have to provide them with that with a set of guidelines related to that. And it's also important that they acknowledge their sources. For example, cite their sources. You also refer them to how to cite their sources, to observe copyright laws, and then ensure that you provide them timely feedback, and again, encourage interactions, and plan carefully your online learning activities. Lastly, ensure that your learning activities engage learners in active learning. And one way to do that is to provide them with relevant content and tasks so they recognize and appreciate the purpose of their learning and its relevance to their lives. That is one guarantee that your learners will enjoy learning with you. Maraming salamat po.
Okay, maraming salamat po, Doc Mona. Thank you very much for that very informative lecture mula sa guidelines, sa mga tools na pwede natin magamit at mga practical na examples to consider sa ating pag-design ng ating mga klase sa next formal. Sigurado ako na maraming natutunan ng ating mga kasama teachers. Kaya while we gather your questions sa ating Facebook Live, iniimbitahan po muli namin kayo na puntahan ang www.kasamateachers.ph. So, ang KaSaMaTeachers.ph po ay isang online community para sa ating mga science and math teachers. Dito po ay may handog kaming free resources at pwede rin po tayong magpalitan ng best practices na kailangan natin sa ating kinakaharap ngayon sa education. So, sino nga ba mga organization behind KaSaMa? So, nandyan po ang UP-NISMED. So, ang UP-NISMED po is an extension unit of the University of the Philippines, Diliman, whose mandate is to help improve science and mathematics education in the country. And together with UP-NISMED, GBF or Gokongwei Brothers Foundation is a family foundation whose core thrust is advancing STEM education, believing that this is the driving force towards sustainable national development. So in 2011, UPNISMED established KaSaMa Teachers to help teachers during the transition to the K-12 basic education curriculum. In 2019, UPNISMED and GBF partnered to bring and improve one-stop hub for communication, collaboration, learning, and development for Filipino K-12 science and mathematics educators. Through its website, kasamateachers.ph, Kasama provides free quality teaching resources, a platform for sharing best practices and professional development opportunities to K-12 science and mathematics teachers. So as we transition to the next normal, now more than ever, the KaSaMa Teachers Community will continue to bring you relevant and helpful opportunities for professional development and develop learning resources which could help you prepare for the opening of classes. So kasama niyo po kami mga kasama. So again, huwag po kayong mahiya at i-post niyo lang po yung mga tanong na gusto niyo pong itanong sa ating resource speaker. Kamusta Doc Mona? Nakahinga na po ba kayo?
Oo. Buti naman at nag-cooperate ang aking internet connection this
Buti
time.
naman. Ang aking pong co-moderator ang hindi po nag-cooperate ang kanyang internet. Kaya ako na lang pong mag-isa ngayon. So, tingnan po natin kung meron na po tayo mga katanungan. Ito po ma'am, Doc Mona, from Miss Jonah Ali. For online classes, is it necessary that quarterly or periodical exams be given online also? Are there other alternatives for this?
Okay.
Yan po, Doc Mona.
Well, dalawang isasagot ko, no? In this time of pandemic, importante siguro yung yung shinare ko kanina na let's not focus on preparing our students for examinations. Okay? Let's help them develop skills and gain knowledge that will help them understand the world around them. And then you can assess learners' understanding not just through exams. Especially in this time of pandemic na parang medyo na kumbaga mentally hindi siguro ganun ka ano yung mga bata ka ready ka prepared pero so wag niyong i-limit sa exams ano. My suggestion is for you to come up with projects no that will enable your students to integrate what they have learned from the lessons and create products that can serve as proofs no that they have understood the lessons. So hindi kailangang exams. If ever kailangan nyo pong mag-exam, you can do it online. So yung sinasabi ninyong hindi kasi kailangan talagang mag-exam. Okay, sige, mag-exam kayo, you do it online. You can give it online. So what I do in my class, if I give an online exam, just like what I did in this past semester na naabutan ng ECQ, kasi what I usually do is to give them face-to-face exams. No? So hindi ako nagbibigay ng online exam. Pero since naka-ECQ tayo, so what I did, I gave them an online exam. So ang online exam ko, mas on the essay type. I just limit the time for them to take the exam so that yung element ng yung cheating medyo makontrol. Pero just kung kasi ang questions nyo are not yung knowledge type. If your questions are those questions that allow your students to think, allow your students to synthesize their learning, allow your students to go beyond those exam questions, then makikita nyo ano kung sino talaga yung nakaintindi nung lesson ninyo. So give questions are not just of the objective type. And so if ever man kailangan nyo po talagang magbigay ng online exam. Okay?
Okay, salamat Doc Mona. So I hope we answered your question. Next question po Doc Mona from Sir Femi Andarayan. Are there elements or components of ODL that we can use in modular distance learning?
Well, uh, yung remember sa MDL na sabi ko, dapat hindi nyo ipa-feel sa students na they're alone, learning alone, no? So, you can do that, yung giving, yung communicating regularly with your students. That's a very common element in distance learning. And that's a very important element in distance learning, to constantly or to regularly communicate with your students so that they are on track and alam nilang hindi sila nag-iisa, alam nilang, may teacher pala kami. Okay? So, communication. So, establish a communication with your students, be it modular distance learning or in online distance learning. That's a common element, no? And yung interactions, especially interactions among students, hindi ganun ka-common yun between that sa dalawa, pero you can make them interact with the content. So, common yon. So, remember, interaction should not be limited to interacting with fellow students and interacting with the teacher. Interaction should be also with content, no? So that they will be engaged in learning. So, isang common element din yon. Okay? So, and establishing yung protocols, yung guidelines, isa din yon sa importanteng elemento na parehong magagamit sa MDL and ODL. Okay?
Okay po, salamat Doc Mona. Ngayon po may isa pong tanong na medyo related po sa ating unang katanungan. Wala po kay Sir Eduardo Garcia. For online learning, how can we be sure about the authenticity of our assessment?
Kaya po siguro mahalaga na gumamit tayo nung sinabi kong assignments na that would require individualized answers. Hindi yung assignments that would require a common, parang sasagutin lang nila yung ano ang geology or paano i-solve ang systems of linear equations. Yung mga ganong tanong na parang okay, nakukuha nila yan kung saan di ba? So, ask them, let them do activities or that would require individualized answers. Like yung sinabi ko kanina, would ask them to gather data, for example, from their household. Kunyari, yung i-analyze nila yung kanilang electricity consumption. Yun kasi hindi mo kung ang data involved at ang kanilang i-observe ay yung kanila nasa context nila, no? Like yung sinabi din yung changes in yung kaninang sample na flash ko on environmental impact. So pag sila nag-monitor ng kanilang mga ginagawa that can impact the environment, so yung mga ganong tipong activities ang ipagawa niyo sa bata para ma-assess niyo yung kanilang sagot talaga na authentic yun real yun, galing sa kanila talaga yun.
Okay, thank you, Doc Mona. So for our last question po from the KaSaMa team, what considerations regarding copyright must we as designers of online activities be aware of? Okay,
ito yung alam ko ito yung mga takot ng mga tao. There are now a lot of open education resources that you can use. So I suggest that you make use of those resources. You look for resources that are open, that are OERs, no, para hindi ho kayo ng copyright. Kasi those are really for free, and you just have to acknowledge, of course, your source. Always, no, ganun talaga din. Always acknowledge your source. And since these resources are developed by others based on their context, dapat kayo din i-develop nyo din yung kung ano yung para sa inyo. So, modify the resource, but don't forget to acknowledge the author, no? So, always cite kung sinong nagsabi niyan. and avoid copy-pasting. Pero naman kasi meron tayo ng fair use guidelines eh. So, pwede nyo pong i-research yan kasi mahaba-habang topic po yon kung anong allowed for us educators, no? So you can research on the fair use guidelines.
Okay, thank you Dr. Mona for that. Maraming salamat po. So kami naman ang magtatanong sa inyo mga kasama teachers. So ito ang ating wrap-up question. So what other modes of learning delivery have you planned to do for your students? So yan, nakikita nyo pong naka-flash sa ating screen ang aming katanungan. So comment your answer below mga kasama. Share with us your ideas and suggestions. We will be featuring some of the best and most relevant answers on our Facebook page tomorrow. So let us continue the conversation on www.kasamateachers.ph. So again, thank you, Dr. Mona, for sharing with us your time and expertise. We have learned so much from your session. I'm sure marami ring takeaways ang ating mga kasama. But before we officially end, is there anything else that you would like to share with us, Dr. Mona?
Wala, Esa, except na kita-kits po tayo next week, September 8, for our third and last session. Maraming salamat po.
Yan, so I bet excited na tayong lahat para sa ating third and last session with Doc Mona. So thank you very much sa pagsama niyo sa amin sa webinar session natin ngayong umaga. We have 2 more sessions for this set, or I think last session for this set, mga kasama. So, naka-flash po ang ating next schedule. So, we value your feedback. So, to help us improve our webinar sessions, kindly click on the link in the pinned comment or the link in the caption to answer a quick survey. For helpful and relevant learning resources, join us by signing up for free at www.kasamateachers.ph. So on behalf of UP Miss Med, Bokong Way Brothers Foundation, and KaSaMa Teachers Community, thank you everyone for participating in our second KaSaMa webinar session. Keep safe and stay healthy mga kasama. See you all in our next webinar session. Salamat. Keep safe.
Thank you.